How does Luke Skywalker go from this...
You failed, Your Highness. I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
to this?
It's time for the Jedi to end.
I'm making this video on behalf of a viewer who asked me to explain that transition because it doesn't make sense to them, and I know it doesn't make sense to a lot of other people, and a sincerely asked question will always get a sincere answer. But I know there are other people watching, and I can already hear you typing, so please just watch the video, hear me out, and then tell me I'm a shill who hates Star Wars, alright? Because I've never agreed that this is as out of character as people make it out to be, and to talk about why we need to start with Return of the Jedi. Now to start, I want to quote the viewer's direct words so that I can answer it more specifically. I just can't wrap my head around how the Luke we see at the end of Episode 6, the one that forgave and emotionally appealed to the number 2 evil in the galaxy, is also the Luke that would even consider confronting Kylo like that. You're far from alone, but let's look at that forgiveness. Something I've seen some people do, and I don't necessarily mean that you are, is there are people who act as though it's Luke's character arc in Return of the Jedi that he forgives Vader and that he realizes he can't attack his father, but he starts the movie knowing that. From minute 1, Luke is adamant about, I can't attack my father. Luke is adamant about there being good in Vader. He submits himself willingly to Vader on the presumption that Vader won't bring him before the Emperor. At every turn, from the very beginning of Return of the Jedi, not even the end, Luke is adamant that Vader has good in him and that he can come back to the light. And yet Luke still does this. Luke still believes just as strongly that there is good in Vader in this moment as there was in the rest of the movie. That hasn't changed. Nothing has happened to lessen the goodness in Vader. The only thing that's changed is that Luke doesn't care anymore. Luke doesn't care because Vader threatened Leia. And I should point out, it's an incredibly vague threat. Luke watched his actual friends currently dying out the window and didn't have as negative a reaction to the idea that Vader might do something negative to his sister. And Vader doesn't even know who that sister is. All he has is the word sister, and it drives Luke into a wild frenzy where he almost murders the man that he came here specifically to save. Luke has always been characterized by passionate fits of anger when it comes to the safety of his friends, even if the person he's defending them against is another member of his family. And that, of course, brings us naturally to Kylo Ren. Now, another thing I want to make clear, another common misconception about the events around Ben's hut, there's a lot of misinformation out there. The phrasing that Luke would even consider confronting Kylo like that suggests to me that you, like many, may be laboring under the misapprehension that Luke went to Ben's hut with the intention of attacking him, which is untrue. I could get into the why of how this false version of events got spread, but it really doesn't matter. What matters is Luke went there to talk, and he says as much the first time he talks to Rey. Luke has sensed the darkness growing in Ben for a while, has seen it in moments during his training, and he goes to confront him about it. When he gets to Ben's hut, though, he finds him asleep. While there, he peers into Ben's mind to get a better understanding of what exactly is troubling the young man. And I've seen some people say that this is a breach of privacy, that he's overstepping bounds to Ben, which is not entirely unfair. I think it's not unreasonable that when the lives of your friends in the galaxy are on the line from a supremely powerful dark side user who could be on the horizon, a little privacy breach isn't necessarily monstrous. It certainly isn't as bad as the other things people accuse Luke of. But I also think it's justified because the intent is that Luke wants to reassure himself that Ben isn't too far gone. He wants to see what's wrong. Unfortunately, what he sees is the exact opposite. Where Luke saw that there was good in Vader, he doesn't see any in Ben. And that's since been recategorized as Palpatine intentionally putting a shroud over Ben, but even at the time, it could just be that Ben is consumed by the darkness around him. Not necessarily that he's more evil than Vader, but that he's less resistant to its power. And now here is something that I've always conceded to people who didn't like the movie. I do think it would have landed better if we had seen what Luke saw. See, this is the moment when Luke is confronted with just how far gone Ben is, and he realizes just the tremendous danger that the people he loves are in. He didn't know up until this point that this was such a severe issue. He thought Ben was just troubled. So, I think it would have landed better for the audience if we also saw what Luke did. As is, though, it isn't hard to guess. Maybe Luke saw Ben murdering his close friend Lor San Tekka. Maybe he saw Ben watching the Hosnian system explode. Maybe he saw Ben annihilating his Jedi Temple, which of course also has a little bit of extra context to it. Or, most significantly, maybe he saw him killing Han. And there are also other options, because we know that Force visions will show you things without necessarily providing all of the information to understand them. And so maybe he saw this. And maybe he saw this. The Force isn't necessarily going to show him that Leia survives that encounter, and we already know that Luke's instinctive reaction to Leia being in danger is... Now, a common reaction to this when I brought it up before is that Luke should have learned from that moment, that he should no longer have that reaction to Leia being in danger, that he should be a wise and sagely Grand Master. To that, I have to point out that the criticism at play here has changed. You are no longer claiming that his actions were out of character for Luke at the end of Return of the Jedi, you're claiming that it is in character for who he was at the end of Return of the Jedi, and that he should have changed since. That between movies, Luke should have grown into a new, different person without the faults of the old Luke. And that's a fine criticism to have, and I could talk about that separately, but those aren't the same thing. The other thing I have to say in response to it is that it contradicts the other thing that Luke's order is often praised for in Legends, which is doing away with the rules about attachment. That by embracing attachment and embracing love, Luke's order was made stronger. But this is the exact consequence of that decision, and it happens in Legends too. In Legends, Luke killed a defenseless enemy because she hurt someone that he loved, or he thought she did, wrongly. And this is no different. It is the fact that Luke is vulnerable to attachment and that he loves passionately that leads him to these moments where he does make mistakes, and this one unfortunately had catastrophic consequences. Now, I'm sure I'll get arguments in the comments and I'll respond to those as they come, but for now, let's say I've won you over on what Luke did being in character for who he was in Return of the Jedi. Now we have to answer, why does he vanish? As the commenter says, self-exile doesn't really feel like a Luke move, and many people have said this as well. They say that Luke should have stayed around and helped. But in all honesty, I think that one of these points feeds into the other as soon as you understand that between the two of us, as far as is Luke justified, or at least not evil for doing what he did to Ben, Luke agrees with you. Whenever you say Luke Skywalker would never do that, that it's unthinkable, that it's a horrid, monstrous thing that Luke Skywalker should know better than, Luke agrees. And Luke feels every bit of shame that you feel for him. After all, Luke Skywalker is characterized by his ability to forgive anyone for their mistakes, but it's always hardest to forgive yourself. And Luke simply can't. People online will call Luke a loser and a failure and a monster for even thinking to do something so horrid, and then simultaneously criticize him for not continuing to take action after that, as though he could possibly trust his judgment based on those criticisms. This commenter asks why Luke didn't stick around just for Leia's sake, but what would Leia think of the monster that her brother had become, of the horrid lunatic who had tried to kill an innocent boy? How could Luke look her in the eye after doing something so unthinkably, unspeakably horrible? I find it odd and contradictory that the two most common criticisms of this character are, you have betrayed every value you've ever held, you're a failure, you are so different from the person you were supposed to be that you are in fact an imitator, an imposter, you're Jake Skywalker because Luke Skywalker would never be as horrible as you, but also you should get over it. Luke tried to take action to help Ben, and in the process made things dramatically, terribly worse, and betrayed someone he cared about. And I find it odd that people can't understand why he avoided further action. As far as Luke was concerned, you were all right. He was a monster. Luke Skywalker was dead, and Jake Skywalker had appeared. And no one needs help from Jake Skywalker. It's why he rejects Rey, not because he doesn't want to help, not because he's afraid or doesn't feel like helping. It's because he feels that she's here to meet the fairy tale fantasy character of Luke Skywalker and just hasn't yet realized that he doesn't exist anymore. But I feel like people also ignore the point of the movie is that he's wrong. And I could keep going, but this video is already going to be long. So if you've watched to the end, I thank you. You can type away about how I hate Luke and Star Wars and George Lucas now. If you have any legitimate questions, I'd be happy to answer them. I don't know if you can tell that Luke is my favorite character in both iterations, Legends and canon, And like I said at the beginning, a sincere question will always be sincerely answered. So even if you disagree with me, as long as you're not a jerk about it, we can talk. As is, though, I hope you've enjoyed, and as always, may the Force be with you.